Lesson 4. We're going to be doing some converting of units. So we're going to convert some measurement units. Let's get going with this. Today's goal is I can convert measurements from one unit to another using double number lines, tables, or by thinking about how much for one. I know that when we measure things in two different units, the pair of measurements are equivalent ratios. Yay, ratios! All right, so make sure you have today's ICANS, today's date, and today's page number. I guess there's a lot of today in this. Anyway, you've got enough today for today to today on. And you're ready to move on. Let's talk about a little bit of a road trip. So, driving along and you see this sign. This is maximum 80. Except that Elena and her mom are on a road trip outside the United States. They see this Elena sees this road sign. Elena's mom is driving 75 miles per hour when she gets pulled over for speeding. She's in another country. What is true about nearly every country but the United States? Yeah, they use the metric system. Number 1, the police officer explains that 8 kilometers is approximately 5 miles. How many kilometers are in 1 mile? Well, we have to divide that out, right? How many times? So really, we could think of it as a fraction, couldn't we? We'd have, it's an 8:5 ratio. Ooh, that's not a good color for on here. It's an 8:5 ratio. Well, what is it for 1 mile? Five can go into 8 one time. You get a 3 left over. 3, and then you put that 0. You got 5 going into 36 times. So it's 1 6/10 kilometers is the same as, hang on. So it's about 1 6/10 kilometers for 1 mile. What about the other way around? How many miles does it take to make 1 kilometer? Well, it's actually going to be less than a mile, isn't it? So a kilometer is shorter. Let's see. So 8 goes into 5. It can go into 50 about 6 times. Get 20. So then that would be 2. So it would be 625 thousandths of a mile. So it's not a full mile, is it? So now that we know that, if she was driving 80 kilometers per hour, or if the speed limit is 80 kilometers per hour, and Elena's mom was going 75 miles per hour, was she actually speeding? I think we can figure that out right away if we look at one real quick thing. Well, we know it was an 8:5 ratio. If I multiply both those by 10, it's an 80:50 ratio, isn't it? So really, 80 kilometers per hour is about 50 miles per hour. Yeah, so she was going pretty fast over the speed limit. She was going 25 miles per hour over the speed limit. What is that in kilometers per hour? Well, we'd have to take and find that out. I think the easiest way to convert this would be to take, if we know our miles or kilometers per mile, we could multiply that the quickest. So we take the 75 miles per hour, multiply it by the 1 6/10, and she was going 120 kilometers per hour. So she was going 40 kilometers per hour too fast. That's why it's important to know some handy ways to estimate and change and figure those over. So anytime you're talking about kilometers per hour or kilometers in general as a measurement, it goes a shorter distance than miles. And when you talk about any units, it's going to be different depending on what they're set up to look like. Let's look over at this next part here. Let's talk about veterinary weights. Oh, look at the puppies. Okay, so which is heavier, a kilogram or a pound? Well, kilograms, if you remember from science class, are actually representing the amount of material or mass in something, but we also talk about kilograms as a unit of weight as well. Now, how do they compare to each other? Which is heavier, the kilogram or the pound? Well, so a veterinarian uses weights in kilograms to figure out what dosages of medicine to prescribe for animals. For every 10 kilograms, there's 22 pounds. So calculate each animal's weight in kilograms, and you can use a double number line, you can use a table, you could draw pictures if you need, whatever it takes for you to get it figured out. Okay. All right, let's take a look at A. So Fido, the Labrador, weighs 88 pounds. What is that going to be in kilograms? Well, how do you go from 22 to 44? Or 22 to 88? You have to multiply by 4. So 4 times 10 gives us 40 kilograms. Okay. What about Spot the Beagle, weighing 33 pounds? How is that going to compare? Well, for this one, it gets a little bit tricky, doesn't it? We need to make something that would work equivalent-wise. Well, I could divide both of these by 3, but divide both those by 2, so that would give me a ratio of 5 to 11 pounds. Darn it. Hang on. Okay, now I got some space. All right, so here we said it was 40 kilograms. Here, so if we take the 22 and make it into 11, that'll probably help us out here, right? Divide this by 2 gives us 5, so a 5 to 11 ratio. And let's see, 3 times 11 makes 33, so 3 times 5 means that the beagle weighs 15 kilograms. And I think I accidentally answered part C, didn't I? Yeah, 5 kilograms, right? We can use that from right before. Okay, a certain medication says it can only be given to animals that are over 25 kilograms. Well, how do we convert that into pounds? Remember, we have 10 kilograms for 22 pounds, or we also talked about that 5 to 11. I think that might actually help us here. How do you go from 5 to 25? Yeah, multiplying by 5. So that would mean we'd multiply the 11 by 5, which gives us 55. So this medication can only be given to animals that are over 55 pounds. No, I don't know why it's LBS. Well, I kind of do. I actually looked it up. It has to do with the original language. Anyway, I'm not teaching ELA. So it's not always about putting it down to a certain 1-to-1 ratio or getting one of those sides to 1. It's about working with the numbers flexibly enough that you can find ways to solve more quickly. Like for A here, it was easy to use 10 to 22 pounds. For B, that wasn't so easy, and it actually made more sense not to go all the way down to what 1 kilogram, how many pounds that was. It made more sense to actually go with something that the 22 could make that would also be a factor of the 33. And then once we got that, we actually got part C without even doing anything. And then that 5 to 11 ratio worked for us in the next piece there. So, again, on a number line, this would have worked pretty easily. On a table, this would have been much easier and much prettier as far as organizing, and so it wasn't such a giant mess that it is right now. I don't have a lot of space on the screen. All right, let's talk a little bit about some cooking and tablespoons. So, Diego is trying to follow a recipe, but he can't find any measuring cups. He only has a tablespoon. And in the according to the cookbook, it says that 1 cup is equal to 16 tablespoons. So, what does he need for each of these? Half cup almonds would be how many tablespoons? Yeah, 8. What about oatmeal? Well, you'd have the 16, right? What's 1/4 of 16? 4. 16 and 4 makes 20 tablespoons. What about 2 3/4 cups of flour? A little trickier, but not terrible. 2 times 16 is 32. 1/4 was 4, so 3/4 would be 12. So 32 and 12 would give you 44 tablespoons. Okay. What about if we change these tablespoons into cups? What do we have to do? Well, here we had to multiply. We had to use 16 to multiply by each of the parts, but here it's going to be the opposite, right? We're actually going to divide by 16. So if you do it as a fraction, you have your 28 tablespoons and divide it by 16. How many groups of 16 can you get out of there? 1 whole 1. That leaves us with 12 sixteenths. 12 sixteenths reduces down to 1 3/4. What about 6 tablespoons of cocoa powder? What's that end up being tablespoon or cups wise? Well, that's 6 divided by 16 again. And we can divide both those by 2, which gets us 3/8 cup. Being able to convert these units is kind of something that does come up. I mean, you can be making something and you can't use a particular measuring cup. So being able to not necessarily, obviously you may end up using a calculator or something, but knowing which way you need to do things is certainly an important skill to develop. So 2 measurements of the same object with different units form equivalent ratios. And we can use any of the tools that we talked about before to help us find that out. The double number line and table and such. Rate per 1 is quite helpful in a lot of times, but not necessarily something that we use every single time. Just depends on the situation. So we are good for today. Thanks for watching.